There. Welcome to Creation Station Monthly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our monthly episode. So we're going to go longer and we're going to talk to two creative people about what makes them tick. What do they think about? How did they get into their job? Where are they doing this from? What makes them creative and how do they apply those talents into this current idea? This month, we're doing veteran services. And I know you're thinking, Bob, that's not really creative. That's more of a job that you do. And I'm going to show you two people are going to prove you wrong on this one. So, my first is Scott Hope from the DAV. How are you doing today, Scott?
Great, Bob. Thanks for having me and letting us talk a little bit about DAV today.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. And the other is James Hayton. James from here in South Florida. How are you doing today, James?
I'm doing very well, Robert. Thank you so much for having me today. Very, very excited for this.
So, James, kick us off. Give us the little nutshell thing about who you are and where you come from for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm James Heaton. I'm currently acting as the Senior Director of the United Way of Broward County's Mission United. I've been in my role as the Senior Director for about a year now, though I've been involved with Mission United for close to 7 years. Um, I actually grew up in Broward County, so I'm a local Broward guy. Went to Broward Public Schools, big fan of Broward Public Library, and very very excited about talking with both of you today. And I'm actually an attorney by education and practice law, um, doing veterans benefits and military law for about 6 years prior to jumping on board with the United Way as this in my capacity as the senior director full time.
How about you, Scott? Give us your nutshell. What's your bio?
Thanks, Bob. Deputy National Service Director for Training is my title here with the Disabled American Veterans. I started in 2007 with the DAV, so going on about 16 years, assisting veterans and filing claims and helping them through the VA process. So very lucky to be able to do what we do and get to do it for the folks, for veterans. Very lucky to have them and the caliber of folks that we work with. So yeah, we have 63 national service offices across the United States, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. So 250 individuals approximately, just making a huge impact for veterans and their families. So, anything that we can do or help with or point in the right direction, we're more than happy to do so.
That is excellent. And just so everybody's aware, today is not necessarily going to be a thing of these are services that are available in your area. This is more about why people are doing this, why these two individuals are here to help do this. And that's what I want to first kick off, because James, you mentioned being a lawyer, and that doesn't necessarily scream out, I want to help veterans by being a lawyer. So tell us, what got you into being a lawyer in the first place? How did that get started? Did you have someone in your family that said, you're going to go to school, young man? Or what happened with that?
Absolutely not. I had none of that. So I'm the first person to graduate college in my family, which I think is pretty interesting. And
Yeah.
obviously, definitely the first person to go to law school. So when I was an undergraduate, I was finishing up my degree in history, something exciting and noble. And I was thinking about what I can do, where can I be useful in life, where can I give back to the community. And I had some friends at the time that were in law school that were pushing me to go to law school. They're like, I think you would like it. You should take the LSAT, try it out, see what happens. So I studied hard, took the LSAT, got a good grade, got into law school with a decent scholarship, and started my adventure into figuring out how to make the world a slightly better place as an attorney, which, I can tell you now, is having a lot of friends who are still practicing law. Uh, Not many people use their law degree to try and to try and help people out without having some sort of monetary incentive for themselves.
How about you, Scott? Where did you get started with thinking about it for veterans? Because you were, right?
Correct. Yeah, I served in the Army from 1997 until 2005. My initial, thought process was I was going to do my 4 years and get out and go use my GI Bill for be a physician's assistant or a physical therapist. But I ended up staying 8 years. I did 2 tours to Iraq. So, the continuation of service and serving those who served was always part of who I was as a medic, first of all as a flight medic, and then getting out and continuing that service, I did, have some patients. I saw some injuries, and it was, well, okay, so they're going to make it, but now what? What's there now? What? And being able to come out and be part of the assistance, to get them back on their feet, and helping them out. So it was a pretty natural transition from helping folks while on ground in Iraq to helping them while on ground back here in the great old United States of America.
Nice, nice, nice. So I want to find out, tell me a little bit more about that, Scott, about being active duty. What did you do before being active duty? Was it always a military? Like for me personally, my father was Army. I went to the Marine Corps. Was it always something that was in your family, just natural, or?
Yes, it was. My grandfather was in the Navy. My father was in the Army. My two brothers are in the Army as well, and I have a stepbrother who was in the Navy. So I mean, we pretty much got around a little bit. He was the smart one. He stayed in for the full 20 years, retired, and really did some fantastic things. He actually works on the Firehawks out there in Colorado, the firefighting helicopters. So it's interesting. My older brother was a medic. My younger brother was a crew chief in a Black Hawk, and I was a flight medic in a Black Hawk. So it all kind of tied together a little bit there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was always in our blood to serve. Again, I had planned on doing 20 or getting out, but I fell right there in the middle at 8 years and decided I'd try my hat at something else. So very lucky. My younger brother is actually the one that got me interested in with the DAV. He had went to go help veterans himself. He got out before I did. And they had said, well, DAV is looking for some folks, but he went and talked to them. And they said, you got to be able to move for DAV. And so he went, he got home. He said, well, listen, my wife's pregnant with our first child. We just put a down payment on a house. I can't move. But when I got out, I talked to him, and yeah, it really worked out for me. They said, where do you want to go? I said, well, Utah or Arizona. And they said, how about Pittsburgh? And I said, okay. So we're used to that kind of thing being, military. It's like, okay, you move for the opportunity. So I was very lucky, very fortunate. I got in at the right time with DAV.
Tell us about that, James. How did you mentioned you've been here in Broward County all of your life, but you had to have moved around a little bit for things.
I would like to tell you, Bob, that I've moved all over the world, but born and raised in South Florida. I went to undergraduate at FAU and I went to law school at FIU. So I've never lived outside of South Florida. I've traveled. My wife and I have done some traveling in our day, but I've never had to shovel snow or, drive my
It's
car
way
outside.
overrated. No. I like the exact amount of snow that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, I've been local my whole life. It was really, I got a great opportunity when I was in law school to intern with the local legal aid program, and it was perfect. I knew that I wanted to use my powers for good at some point, so why not start with legal aid? And this was probably about 11 years ago now, and I was involved with their veterans advocacy program, and I'll explain in more detail in a little bit if you want. But
Oh
we
yeah,
had this
please
great
do.
opportunity to work directly with the VA to change some local procedure of what was happening with veterans trying to access health care at the local level, which ended up turning into some national changes. And it was just this amazing snowball effect and windfall for all of our veterans locally, but also on a national scale as well. So it was one of these things where, as an attorney, I learned that I had this at least perceived authority, where people like the director of your local Miami VA will actually sit down and invite you in to listen to you and hear what you have to say. And I found at that point that, wow, this actually might work out for what I want to do, where having a law degree can really help me effectuate some change.
How about that leads me into one of the questions I always ask, and it's going to be different for both of you, I think, is what tools do you use to be creative with? And I think you're leading us right there, James, with the idea of using the law degree or just the perceived thing. So fill us in a little bit more about that and what it was that you actually did. And Scott, just jump in with your ideas on what tools you think worked, but you've developed, I guess, over time as being part of this.
Sure. So What we were able to do is we started noticing that there was an issue with veterans who had other than honorable discharges specifically, mostly because of misconduct that was symptomatic of PTSD or TBI or some sort of mental health issue that developed while in service or was exacerbated by military service, that weren't getting treatment at the VA, though clearly their condition was directly related to military service, whether it's combat exposure or not. And we were able to push the local VA director after several meetings and several briefings about how the law should be applied, how it was intended to be applied, and eventually he agreed with us, started pushing his local folks to get better training. That went to kind of a statewide thing where our Florida Department of Veterans Affairs started picking up some notice on that. And then there was a memo issued later that year, or I believe maybe 14, 16 months later, that that really got everyone else on the same page saying, hey, you guys need to start looking at this because there are a lot of veterans who are showing up to the VA hospital with just their DD-214 in hand, and it might say other than honorable on it. And what the VA is supposed to be doing is taking a deeper look, taking a deeper look at what is the reason behind this other than honorable discharge, and can we screen this person into healthcare? But unfortunately, what was happening all too often, and it's not the fault of the big VA, just some maybe some bad apples in the front end. People were just being told no, just saying, hey, no, you're not eligible here. Sorry. And I'm still hearing once in a while that it happens around the country, but it's gotten a whole lot better for our guys and girls that are trying to get the service that they're entitled to from the VA.
What about you, Scott? What tools are you using out there?
Oh, well, we use pretty much the same ones that James is using, really. We use our legislators. We have a legislative team that goes and lobbies. You will see DAV in the background of the PACT Act signing. So we had lobbied, and John Stewart worked with my good friend Shane that is here in the building with me, and it was finally passed. And James brings up a great point. We called it the VA turnaway problem, right? And, being a veteran and having an honorable discharge, a lot of folks at the VA are veterans themselves. And as soon as they see that OTH, there's a bit of scrutiny and, a kind of, well, this guy is not a veteran, and frankly, he should have an honorable, or she should have an honorable discharge. And if that's not the case, then, you got to go get that upgraded. We can't do anything for you, when what should be determined is a character of discharge determination rating, right? They need to immediately say, okay, well, listen, what happened here? Why would why is this an OTH? Does it fall under the, persistent and willful misconduct? That statute is pretty, it's pretty technical when you start thinking about it. And the VA was just really saying no. And it happened a lot. And I'll tell you that a veteran has that kind of interaction immediately with the Department of Veterans Affairs, they're not coming back a lot of the time. So we really did a disservice to veterans at that. Go ahead, James.
I was just saying, you're 100% right on that. I had a veteran, I'll never forget this guy. He got out during peacetime. It was mid 80s, I want to say 86, 87, and he went to the VA when he got out. He had an other than honorable discharge. He was told no. He never went back. He came to me in 2017. So we're talking 30 years later. We weren't even discussing VA benefits, but we would do a holistic review about it for everybody. I'm looking over his paperwork. I'm like, oh, so are you getting your healthcare from the VA? He goes, no. I'm like, why not? So they told me I'm not eligible. Of course you're eligible. I'm like, you have 2 enlistment terms. I'm like, you have 2 separate enlistment terms. I'm like, all right, this is what you need to do. Today, leave my office, go down the street to the VA. I highlighted exactly what you need to explain to them, and call me when you get an answer. He calls me maybe an hour and a half later. He goes, James, he's like, I'm enrolled in VA healthcare. I'm like, yeah. It's crazy how just that slight guidance, that a little bit of help.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And you don't want to be that, that stigma of being a veteran who's repeatedly turned away and just told no. So it is frustrating on that end for sure. We have our service officers go through a 16-month on-the-job training program to become a national service officer. And then we have a 32 lesson plan structure to continued training after that. So, one of the big lesson plans in there is discharge upgrades. And, we work with a couple other nonprofits, the Veterans Consortium. They do a pretty good job pro bono stuff as well for veterans who are in the exact same, the PTSD, the military sexual traumas, the, TBI that, I was in a vehicle accident. It's not necessarily combat, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes on, in the military training, and, it's a rough, tough job. So, there's a lot of folks that really do get left by the, left by the side of the road. So, yeah, we train our folks to be looking at all that stuff. You don't adjudicate, the claims while they're sitting there with you, or, you take their word for it, and you'll be surprised at the wild stories that you'll hear, like, oh, they, did this to me, I was part of this, experiment, okay, and then sure enough, it comes out in the records like, wow, like they literally had to document it, right? Like you had to volunteer for it, but it's documented. So yeah, trust in the veteran, doing, the best that you can for them. That's really, very important as to that's what we train our folks to do is, listen to the claimant, listen to the family member. And always do treat them as if they were your brother, sister, father, mother, that kind of thing, and you won't go wrong. So
Yeah,
And
I
Scott,
want to
you,
add
you
to
leave it.
that.
Again, get you back to that in just one second, James, because I want you to follow up on that, Scott, about the training idea. Because James is a lawyer. Not everybody's going to law school. You didn't go to law school. What kind of training did you have prior to showing up? And
so
then I want to hear from both of you about the non-trained people you work with, because it's not like you two are out there doing all of the work. You've got a lot of volunteers and other staff people. And what kind of training are they going through? And what would somebody who's interested in giving back like that look at?
So our like I said, our 16-month on-the-job training program is very intense. It's laid out week by week for the first 4 months, and then on the fifth month, that's when you also start doing our structured and continued training program. So myself, I had a high
Who's
school.
eligible for that program? Who's eligible? Is that something somebody could do right out of high school, or is that really a college graduate thing?
So in order to be a national service officer, you have to be eligible for vocational readiness and employment through the VR and EVA. So that's the prerequisite. So you do have to be a veteran
Okay.
to start with. But whether I was extremely lucky. I was a flight medic, like I said, and but back when I was in, that was an EMT basic with post-traumatic PTLS, post-trauma life support, basic trauma life support, advanced cardiovascular life support. So it was basically a paramedic program, but the licensure was not there. So those things got changed up a little bit after I got out. It is now a paramedic course to go to Fort Rucker, from what I understand. That wasn't the case. So whether you were infantry, whether you were cook, whether you're a truck driver, or whether you're a flight medic, I mean, any of those individuals can come to the DAV, and be trained as a national service officer if we are hiring, right? We're always accepting applications, but and once you start that program, like I said, the 32 lesson program is started in the fifth month of the on-the-job training. That 16 months is your foundation. Once you complete the structured and continued training program, those 32 lessons, you will repeat it over and over your entire DAV career, because the law changes everything, it's organic. And we can train, we pride ourselves to be able to train anybody to be able to be what our technical term is attorney in fact. We get to, practice law before administrative law judges, for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So we get to do hearings. We get to advocate on behalf. We get to write what we call independent hearing presentations, IHPs, which is a written legal argument that's looked at by the Board of Veterans Appeals. So there is a lot that goes into just becoming a national service officer. And once you complete the 32 lesson plan structure to continue training, it takes about 3 years, but we do work with the American Council on Education. And that training from start to finish, if you complete it all successfully, is worth 15 credit hours with them for administrative law, for anatomy, physiology, medical terminology, those kind of things. And our training program is 100% online. We call it iTrack, Interactive Training, Research, Advocacy, and Knowledge. And, it's unbelievable the way we've been able to leverage that, because what we'll also do is leverage the videos on YouTube, right? Scott could sit down and make a video about the alveoli in the lungs, but it would be terrible. And there's professionals out there, John Hopkins, that have it down. So We get to leverage that. We work with a Lumen Group to make the training program itself. We have 3D interactive uh, charts. We have, where you can take away, see deep tissue stuff. I mean, it is very, very cool. It's the envy of all service organizations, our training program. And, it's a little bit arrogant and maybe,
It's a
one-sided
good
here.
thing. Yeah. Be proud of
But
all the stuff you can do. Yeah.
well, and the training program started in 1944. So DAV's had a training program all the way back to 1944. We started with 10 classes of 24 weeks to train our first class until we had about 400 service officers. Um, Obviously, we have adapted and changed. I have a magazine cover from 1987, and it says the best get better, and it's a DOS computer, floppy disks, cassettes, VHSs, right, and a flip chart of anatomy,
Yeah.
and that
And now
was
we're up to using virtual reality to
that
help
was
people out. Yeah.
cutting edge. Right? That was
Yeah.
cutting edge for the time. Um, and then we moved to a paper-based system where it was, the same lessons, all that kind of thing. You would handwrite all the answers. So that was all the way up in 2000 until 2015 when we went to the online, the iTrack system. And, we've just been able to do so much more and train folks so much easier and have it as a research tool. It's not just so we can, put into the search engine of the Board of Veterans Appeals, favorable outcomes, DAV represented clients, and, look for these keywords, and it will pull up, thousands of decisions that meet that criteria. So, I mean, we've leveraged a lot of stuff when it comes to that and made the studying quite a bit easier. No more hand cramps for our newer folks. So, you know.
How about you, James? Tell us about that. Bringing those people in and for the education side of things,
Sure.
the other people working with you that aren't lawyers,
Yeah.
how do they get in there and how do they get involved?
So there's kind of two tracks that I'll discuss, and one we'll start with the non-lawyer track, and we heavily rely on our veteran service officers. So just everything that Scott was saying, we rely on both national VSOs and county VSOs and statewide VSOs to really help when it comes to for our case management staff and our employment staff and our education staff when they're interfacing with other veterans to make sure that all of their benefits needs are being met and that any barriers to either accessing VA healthcare or VA benefits can be addressed. So it's heavily relied on. We outsource almost all of it at this point because uh, as Scott just mentioned, it's a pretty high bar for training for the VSOs, and what better resource? There's no point of us reinventing the wheel here and having our own VSO program. We're fortunate enough to have in our building veteran service officers, county veteran service officers that spend a portion of their time on site. So veterans that come in to get services from us, whether it's through our supportive services for veteran families or homeless veterans reintegration program or shallow subsidies or grant and per diem, they can meet with a VSO as part of that case management packet. So it's we definitely rely heavily on the VSOs, folks like Scott and his team, to screen the vets. Now we also stand up a legal program, which I ran in the legal program at Legal Aid for veterans for 6 years, which had a large pro bono project. And one of the most difficult things to do are to find attorneys who know what they're talking about when it comes to VA benefits. So what I decided to do in 2016, I joined the American Bar Association's Commission on Homelessness and Poverty and immediately started linking up with other attorneys who were worth a damn doing VA benefits and learned from the best. From there, just doing the work every single day, working closely with the VSOs, working with other national programs, the Veterans Consortium, huge partner of ours. And then what we started doing is realizing, hey, why don't more law schools teach this stuff? I didn't learn in law school. I had to get a hands-on experience. There wasn't a class on VA benefits or veterans law at the time. So we started developing one locally in South Florida. We worked with a local law school. We welcomed summer interns in And, as many that wanted to come, and we taught them the law, and we let them handle cases all the way up to, as Scott was saying, up to the Board of Veterans Appeals. COVID was fortunately one of the things that worked really well for us as all the hearings moved on to WebEx, and we were able to take law students from across the country who are interested in learning this stuff and have them sit on these BVA hearings with us. It's wonderful. Working with the Veterans Consortium, they got to work on legal briefs for at the federal level in front of the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. That's something that law students don't get to do too often. So one of the needs, as I said, that we saw was the lack of training and lack of education for attorneys coming up the system who wanted to learn this law, so they don't become these fly-by-night, let me hook up with a doctor who's not too scrupulous to get some claims pushed through type of attorney, into being someone who can actually make a difference in the life of these veterans. I just got the opportunity, found out about it earlier and got the green light yesterday, that we're going to relaunch the Veterans Law Clinic at Nova Southeastern University here, which will allow us to train the next wave of young attorneys coming through on how to handle these types of cases and do it the right way and do it with compassion, which I was going to mention. That's one of the tools that Scott was talking. One of the tools that we use that I think we all use is compassion, to be able to make sure that we're addressing the veteran as a human being, as a whole person, and that we're able to remove these barriers.
So this is the question that I always ask of successes and failures. Tell me, what is your favorite success that you've been able to achieve in being able to help or do someone?
I would say that being able to be one of the chief trainers for the organization and make an impact with that many national service officers. And in addition to our national service officers, like I said, we have 255 across the nation. We also have transition service officers. They cover 100 military bases. And, there's 30 of them that cover that, right? So, when I got out, probably when you got out, it was okay, you're getting out, like, later, skater. And so now we, have somebody sit down with a veteran and say, okay, well, listen, these, just because you broke your ankle playing basketball, not in Iraq, doesn't mean we don't claim it. So there's somebody there giving them very good advice, and being able to put together programs that teach those 250, NSOs and those 30 TSOs on, to advocate on behalf of veterans and their families is just, the best feeling in the world. I would have to say that would be the greatest accomplishment, I think, that I up to date is, our iTrack system. And we're in the middle of our fourth build. We're going to build out 5 to include our chapter and department service officers, because those individuals are at the local level, like James says. We have just over 2,500. When we include the county veteran service officers who are accredited with DAV, the National NACVSO, National Academy of County Veteran Service Officers, they're part of that program. They can be cross-accredited with DAV and get access to our claimants. So we cross streams there, and then we'll be able to train those folks, and they'll have access to the information, the service officers guide and iTrack, just like our national service officers and our transition service officers do. So I'm part of that build. My very good friend Justin Hart is also building out with me. We're the ones that take care of that, and just making that huge impact. It is just it is one of the highlights of my career so far. Hopefully I have a few more. Only been doing it 15.
And it's so funny listening, Scott. It's just, you run through the acronyms. You're just like, yeah, you were definitely in the service.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's hilarious. No, it's great. No, everybody I think understands it. And if they don't, they're going to go hit the website and they're going to figure out. James, tell us, what's your good success?
So I think the reputation that we built for our local legal project as being the source for taking the cases where veterans have been told no hundreds of times, where someone comes to us and they say, well, I don't think this is going to work because I've been told no so many times. So really being able to do a deeper dive and looking into these cases. And then, sometimes there is no case there. Sometimes there's really, the facts don't line up. And you just have to be able to explain honestly to some of your clients that, hey, this might not work out, maybe it will. But one of the things that we've been really successful on is through that program, really garnering local community resources. So, as you all probably know, the United Way is really big at bringing together community partners. So, we work very closely with our local VA healthcare center based out of Miami that oversees Broward County as well, the local library. But we also work closely with Henderson Behavioral Health, which helps do individual and group therapy for veterans who may not want to use the VA. We work closely with our consolidated credit, which is able to do no cost to the veteran, full budgeting and assessments, and also on the federal level with the Department of Labor and the Department of Veterans Affairs. So just being able to say that our program doesn't do it alone, that we're really, it takes a village, and we're really able to pull in these juggernauts to help make an impact on each individual and in their families that come through our doors. Just the greatest success. I'm happy to share individual case successes because I've got like 3 stories on the top of my head that I just don't know how we got these things granted, but that's.
I've heard some of the stories from you on the continuum stuff. So yeah, I know you've got some really good successes there, James. What do you guys think the rest of society outside of veterans thinks about this? And in particular, one of the reasons it occurred to me I was going to toss this question out because it's not a normal one for this kind of conversation, but then it was like, wait a minute, we're making kind of a big deal about it because it's November. You guys do this 365. So what do you think out there is the perception, or how do we, adjust that idea out there for the people putting in the work like you guys are? I think for the most part in the United States now, we've grown to an appreciation of veterans and stuff, but for what you're doing, what do you think how do people think about it? We're not going to tell you, James, what we think of lawyers, but
I'll tell you what I think of lawyers. So I'll tell you one of the crazy things that I realized early on was that, and coming from a complete civilian perspective, is that the perception of veterans is really generational. So you look back, World War II vets, you think hero, you think, savior of the world. And then you shift over to Korea and people are like, wait, there was a Korean War? I don't remember that. And then Vietnam, and you start looking at negative connotations of those folks coming back from Vietnam. And then you had some peacetime in the Gulf War. And then we started seeing, my friends, a lot of good friends that I have growing up, post 9/11 vets, that come back, and there's a perception that these folks are broken in some way, that they're damaged from the war, and and that there needs to be some level of charity around them. And I think that is one of the things where we're trying to remove all of these stigmas from military service and show, a lot of we do this because we care for those folks that served our country. We don't do this because they need a handout. I think that's one of the most important things that we really try to bake into the services that we provide. Is, you're not coming here, and our team is mostly veterans. You're not coming here as a veteran because you're needy or you're broken in some way. You're coming here because you're going to be around other veterans, and you're going to do this. You're going to get the assistance. You're going to get the hand up and not the hand out. That's really going to help get you on the straight and narrow. So that's personally for me what I think one of the biggest things that I would like to get across to the non-veteran community.
No, I think that's a lot of great points, James. And I would, I'll add to that and say, a lot of times veterans don't know the difference. Even veterans don't know the difference between DAV and the VA, right? They'll call and yell at us and tell us we did this and that because we're answering the phone when they call, right? It's very difficult sometimes to get a hold of the VA, and it's very difficult to get somebody at the VA that really knows veterans, benefits. So what I would like to do is be able to, make DAV more public, better outreach, better primetime spots on the television to let veterans know that DAV is not the VA. You do not have to be a member of the DAV to receive our services. We do a lot more than just veterans advocacy and benefits. We have a transportation network to help you get to and from VA appointments. We have, an employment program. We work very closely with Recruit Military. We have our legislative program that, is also extremely important for what we do. So we're not, a lot of times veterans think about a veteran service organization and they think, the local VFW hall beers and, camaraderie and story sharing. And that's just not that's not the end of what DAV does. We definitely have our camaraderie, but us being able to get out there a little bit more, leverage social media and let folks know the DAV is, a lot more than just hey, maybe we can, file your benefits or you know, just working with a person, the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs is what I'd say compartmentalized. There's silos. They have the vocational readiness and employment, and then they have their Veterans Benefits Administration, and they have the Veterans Hospital Administration, and our National Service Officers are very, very good at knowing all of those programs. When you call it Veterans Health Administration, you're going to get somebody that knows how to make an appointment. They're not going to be able to assist you with, filing a claim, right? And our folks are able to do all of that. And I think that, just getting it out there that, hey, that we are really, there for the veteran. We're on their side. We're their advocates. And we're not the Veterans Administration. I would really like to stop getting those two conflated because it's a non-adversarial process on the books, but it's definitely an argument between DAV and VA a lot of the time on what a veteran's earned. So I that's what I would say is, I wish that everyone was as familiar with DAV as I am, but that probably will never happen.
You've got the years of experience on this one on so many people. Speaking of years of experience, and you guys have both sort of touched on it, but I want you to really explain it for yourself from your own personal idea now. What changed over the last years? James, you started to talk about changing how people viewed veterans, but in your own time doing this, what's changed in how you've had to work in the field? How, coming up with new ideas, new solutions? Scott, you had mentioned, doing more of the video stuff and going online, and James, you were talking about WebEx. What are some of the things that you feel like this is something that anyone coming into the field is going to start on second base, where you guys built up to that?
I'll say personally for me, the saturation in this area of veterans assistance has changed a lot, for good and for not so good. So for the good, obviously, having more resources is always a useful thing. However, being able to vet those resources can be daunting. And coming out of the military, as you guys know, going through TAPS and just being like, get me the hell out of here so I can continue my life as a civilian.
I don't even remember TAPS. I was like, was that like a thing? I know I did it. I know I have a piece of paper that says I did it, but I'm like, seriously, really? What? This was like 2 hours. Come on now, people.
We just recently got involved in the South Florida TAPS program, so we're running a section of TAPS now, and it's been very helpful because we actually bring on resources and facilitate networking connections. But anyway, navigating all the resources is difficult. So having more resources can make navigating more difficult. Figuring out what's real, what's not real, what's fly by night, what's here to last and here to actually help can be very, very daunting. And that was the whole reason why Mission United was established, was to really help veterans navigate those resources. So it's both a positive and a negative, because as more resources come in, the more nuanced things that can be done, but the more difficult it can be to navigate through what's available and what's real.
Tell me, Scott, what have you grown into and built to make it feel like the next person's going to have it a little bit easier?
So what we do, obviously, we have an internal case management system that tracks our veterans, right? And we were able to build that out as an organization specific to our needs. I was part of that build So we did change that up a little bit. If somebody contact us on our NSO locator, it's at dav.org. If you go to our locator, you put in the zip code, you can send an email directly to the National Service Office that's closest to you. So when we build out the system this time, that builds a profile and it checks the system to make sure we're not having a duplicate claimant. So, we've kind of transitioned from, less input, more automation in that area. I would also say that the transition that the Appeals Modernization Act played as an organization, because that's really a misnomer. The Appeals Modernization Act changed the whole claims process. So it really does change on a dime anymore where, hey, this form is needed with that form, and just having to learn and teach those nuances to the folks that are out there on the ground doing it. We definitely had to change gears, put out information, become more communicative with our folks. And the pandemic also opened a lot of opportunities for us when we were basically said, listen, 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 18 months, right? We had stood up a 800 number, 888 number. The veterans could still contact our national service officers. We could answer questions. We could take their calls. We could still conduct training. We started we ended up with Zoom instead of WebEx, but we had our Starleaf going. We were doing video calls. We were able to, like James said, hold hearings with veterans law judges and veterans while they're in their home. So it really, that transition of making those things happen is a much easier process now, I think, for the next generation coming, because all those are now in place, right? The ability to get into veterans' homes and do those telemedicine and do the hearings and stuff. I mean, it's just going to be the way it is when veterans from other generations and our folks come in. So, but standing that up, and COVID just really tested the flexibility of us, especially with we're a centralized organization. We're very lucky that the DAV is structured as a national organization, and all those 255 folks, go through the same training and have maybe a slightly, but chain of command is the same. And VFW is a state organization, right? And they do things a little bit different in Florida than they do in California. So DAV is lucky in that. Being able to communicate, standing those things up, and being successful in that transition, it's just going to be the way things are done now. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway of, like you said, starting on second base rather than, doing the bunt and trying to get the first.
So I got one more question. We've flown through almost a whole hour already. So I want to get one question in that I always ask is, when you were a kid, what were you doing that was creative? Was it you were an artist? Were you playing in mud puddles? Were you dancing? Were you singing? What was it that you were being creative at that somebody either helped and said, hey, we need to channel this energy, or you just kind of figured out on your own that you're going to do something else?
Really interesting. It's a great question. And I was the kid who would always bounce between different things. So I did karate for a few years, and I played soccer, and then I picked up guitar because I thought it'd be cool to do with my friends and impress girls. And then I just became a huge nerd. I played, like D&D and Magic the Gathering for a while.
We still play D&D. Come on now.
Nice. So I still play Magic the Gathering. And and it really just became from there. I ended up bouncing around so many different social circles and communities that I just realized I really like doing this. I really enjoy being around a diverse groups of people, especially growing up in public school here in South Florida. There's so much diversity that I just, looking back at it, I still have friends today from all those different walks, and such a diverse group. And it made me realize that this is one of the most beautiful things about being able to being in a position to help people and being in a position to serve the community, is just like finding the joy in it, and enjoying the social aspects, and meeting new people, and being able to connect with them, and find a way to really help them. So I didn't realize it at the time, but all of that really culminated into to what I do today.
How about you, Scott? What did you do?
Well, I didn't
For
have a
some
lot
reason,
of.
I'm picturing you on dirt bikes. I don't know.
I was gonna say we didn't have the means to do a whole lot of extracurricular activity. My older brother was given the clarinet for about 2 weeks, and that went straight back. No more instruments for any of us. We played outside a lot, and I would just say that it was always, it was riding your bike or playing basketball. I would much rather play the sport than watch it on TV. And I guess that just, just being, just moving and being active. I guess I had a lot of energy and I wasn't allowed in the house a whole lot. So definitely, definitely
Yeah.
just being a kid and playing outside, whether it was GI Joes in the dirt or the sandbox or swinging on a swing set somewhere. I mean, it was always moving, and I think that that's served me well as well. Just always being busy, ready to get stuff done, and working to standard, not to time. And I think that just I think it does go back, and it's amazing now that you asked that question. Looking back,
Yeah.
not a lot has changed. My wife still doesn't want me in the house half the time, so pretty busy chopping wood or something.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole thing. You get loud and you just kind of stay that way for a few decades. Yeah, I get that. So the last thing is equipment. What is your dream piece of gear that you want to be able to help and do in the future? Because that's, I'm all about the, using virtual reality or augmented reality to do trainings and stuff like that. But you guys might very well have something totally different that you want. What's your ideal future? Go pluck this with any limitless money to build and develop. Tell me.
Yeah.
Good
No, I'm
call.
building it actually. I mean, that's what we're doing, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing off the shelf that exists to do what we do better than what I think that we have. And, we're building that future. We are leveraging the technology. The code gets better every time we do a build and things change. So, I mean, hopefully in, 5 years, we'll be able to pluck that perfect system out. It'll still be, organic and growing, but, just being able to build it the way we want it is the most important part. So that's what I would say as far as perfect piece of equipment. It'll be always be changing. So I think we're building it for the future. That's all I have.
I'm going to be
Nice.
more ambitious than you, Scott. I'm going to say that plus. So yeah, if I could wave a magic wand over everything, having some sort of referral and case management software that also tracked records and integrated with court systems and VA records, the National Archives, and just to make everything as easy as possible. Because one of the most difficult things that happens in these grassroots programs is uh, we have to follow the rules that are implemented by our grantors. So the Department of Veterans Affairs through SSVF says that we have to keep X, Y, and Z documents. Well, you're coming across a client, a veteran who's in crisis. They may have X and Y documents, but it's really difficult for them right now to get that Z document, that last document. And so now the case manager is spending more time than necessary helping the veteran get those documents when they exist somewhere and they should be readily accessible. And it's really taking away from time that can be used to resolve barriers and crises and address these things. So having one integrated system that everyone got along with and agreed upon and said, yes, we're using this, we're committed to using this, and it's useful, and we're able to get all the things that we need on it in a click of a button and track everyone. And this is now sounding pretty dystopian. Make sure
That's it's a good tool, and that's one of
yes.
those key things. I talk about on my regular weekly show. These are great tools. It's how you use the tool. It's how you
Mm,
apply it, and who's in charge of applying it that creates our problems in the world sometimes.
yeah.
So that is really the goal. So I got the United Way and the DAV websites I've put up for both of you. These are going to be in the show notes, people. So if you are intrigued by any of the stuff you heard, or if you know someone in the family or friends who is a veteran and needs help, um, in the show notes, there's the direct links to both of their sites. Thank you, James. Thank you, Scott, for being here this month and talking about this kind of stuff. I hope it opened up some people's eyes that it's not just an office job, that there's some actual creativity going on and how everybody's working and building this stuff. And I'm going to throw up our final slide here. As always, if you'd like to get any other information, creationstation@broward.org comes right to us. Thank you all very much for being here today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.